Hi, everyone. We're super excited to have everyone here today. I'm Annabelle, Talent Community Coordinator at BioBuzz. Welcome. Today we have Lauren Shue. Lauren is an experienced recruiter with a passion for connecting people. Her background includes both corporate and contingency recruiting for life science professionals, mid-level through executive level. Lauren enjoys building high-performing teams through teamwork and collaboration. Today, Lauren is going to be presenting on navigating your path to a rewarding career in clinical research. So everyone, welcome Lauren today.
Thank you, Annabelle. So as Annabelle said, my name is Lauren Shue. I have been recruiting within the life sciences industry for about 20 years now. And I have been in a variety of environments. I've been in the corporate side, on the contingency third-party side, as well as consulting. And so I feel like I've had a chance to see a lot of different views of how people navigate their careers within clinical research. And one of the common roles that people pursue and that people grow out of are the clinical research associate roles. So both a clinical research associate and regional clinical research associate, as it may be called, those roles are critical for the whole process. And they also produce very well qualified candidates to progress their career within the field as well. I really enjoy connecting people. I tell the people that I work with that it's a mutual selection process. And so just as much as you're deciding, you're trying to impress your potential employer, you're also vetting them and deciding, is this the role for me? Is this a role that's going to make me happy? So hopefully what we're going to cover today will help provide some clarity around that, if this type of position would be for you. And if so, some things you can do to help yourself get to that point. So we will move into the first slide. So what is a clinical research associate? They are someone who is responsible for the most important part of the clinical trial process, meaning critical to the integrity of the data and the quality of the clinical trials. They are somebody who's making sure that things are ethical, that things are in compliance with the protocol, making sure that everybody's safe throughout the process, and identifying any irregularities. So responsible for monitoring the clinical trials, overseeing that the study sites are following all the procedures they should be following. They're also acting as a liaison between the sponsors and the sites. So oftentimes they will be traveling, going to the site locations, and not only overseeing what's happening there and being kind of an audit person in that capacity, but also ensuring to communicate back to the sponsor. They also ensure, as I mentioned, data integrity and quality are really important. So they'll often be the ones looking over all of the information coming in, identifying any sort of deviations, and making sure that things are flagged and properly addressed. They also provide site training and support. So CRAs do get to meet with the clinical trial staff on site, as I mentioned. There are some roles now where they are doing virtual monitoring, but I think it's still pretty common to have everybody travel to their site to ensure that everything's being properly done in person. So that's kind of a quick rundown on what a clinical research associate is. Now, the key responsibilities, and we did cover this a little bit, but just to dig a little bit deeper, monitoring the study sites. That, again, as I mentioned, oftentimes requires somebody to go on site to see the facility and make sure that the people and the resources there are all in line with the good clinical practices, regulatory requirements, and following the protocol. Making sure the protocol is being followed and flagging anything that might be considered a deviation from it. They're also providing support to the investigators and offering guidance and assistance to the study investigators, making sure that everything runs smoothly. And so being able to think on their feet and problem solve is another component of this. So in terms of educational requirements, it used to be that a bachelor's degree was not necessary, but what I've seen over the many years that I've been doing this is that it really is very, very valuable to have a bachelor's degree, specifically in a scientific field. Oftentimes, the experience you'll have from gaining that degree will really set you up for some of those core skills that you'll need to be successful in the role. And also, of course, gaining the relevant clinical research experience is going to be important too. Certifications that you can acquire, there's two different avenues you can go down there. One is more focused. The Association of Clinical Research Professionals does offer certification, and that's for a broader group of clinical research professionals. And so they have a variety of things they offer. The Society of Clinical Research Associates, that certification is more focused for the CRA role. So essential skills for a CRA. So as I mentioned, going on site, being a essentially middle person between the sites and the sponsor, strong communication skills are really important, both written and oral. So oftentimes what will happen is when a CRA goes on site, they do all of their checks and evaluations, they're looking at everything, and then they need to write a report at the end of that where they can communicate everything back to the sponsor. So that is a big component of it. Also having strong attention to detail. As we mentioned before, going over that data, making sure to flag anything that looks like it's deviating from what they're expecting. It's really important. This role is going to be kind of that first line of catching something if they're reporting back through their reports that they're doing. They're also going to be needing to resolve the challenges that may arise during the course of this, and being able to communicate that quickly and be available. So having kind of a calm, under pressure, can-do attitude is really helpful, because you are essentially on your own in some way. You're going out to the site and you're the representative there. So while the site is definitely a partner in the process, you're the one going on site and representing either the CRO or the sponsor that you're with. So definitely being able to take command and handle any sort of unexpected challenges that arise. And another important piece of all of this is for the clinical research associate to really have a strong understanding of the clinical trial process, of the clinical trial regulations, and be up to speed on what all of those are in terms of the current regulations. There's the ICH, GCP, clinical trial regulations, and understanding as well, some CRAs may be monitoring outside of the US. And so there's going to be different regulations that they need to adhere to, be it in the US or outside of the US. So being up to speed on all of that, and that's some of what can be gained through those associations that I mentioned before. They have educational opportunities and certifications that you can do to really get up to speed on what's involved with that. So that can give you an idea. If you see these skills here listed and you feel like it describes you, then you would be really putting some of your strengths to good use to do this role. And what's really great about the position is also that it really can lead to additional career opportunities. So building off of that base of those skills that you're bringing into the role, there's definitely an opportunity to go a lot of different directions within the life sciences space. As a lead CRA, you would be overseeing coordinating activities of a team of CRAs and ensuring, protocols are followed and kind of being that next tier of confirmation that everything's going as it should be. And also, if things need to be escalated, being that person that things would be escalated to. There's also the clinical trial manager role. So managing the operational aspects of the clinical trials, which would include budgeting, timelines, resource allocation. So those are some of the components that clinical trial managers handle. Within the pharmaceutical biotech side, people can transition into a variety of roles there, from that baseline of a CRA position, getting to work into project management, regulatory affairs, medical affairs, really building off of those skills that you have and maybe being aware of what you're really good at and and focus in on that to transition to some of those other roles. Within the CRO side, there's also a variety of roles you can move into there. One big difference, while there are project management opportunities, regulatory affairs, medical affairs, and medical writing, like all of those roles you'll find within both sponsor companies and CROs. One big difference between the two that I try to flag people on is that the CRO roles, because you're at a clinical research organization, you then have a client, which is the sponsor company. So if you find that you're really good with communicating to a client in a customer service capacity, then that can be a really great space to work in, because you get to serve in that larger capacity, maybe doing some business development and in addition to operations. If you shy away from business development or those types of activities, then and customer service is not something that you've had a lot of experience with, being more on the sponsor side may play more to your strengths as well. So lots of directions you can go. Definitely having that CRA experience can be very valuable. Now, in terms of networking and professional development, as I mentioned, there is the ACRP and Society of Clinical Research Associates. There's also other professional groups out there, and taking advantage of those opportunities is huge. Anything you can do to stand out. The CRA field, while there's a high need for CRAs, it can also be very competitive, is what I've seen. So being able to really keep up to speed with what's happening in the industry, attending some of those events where you get to network and meet people. There's nothing like face-to-face interaction and really kind of being able to connect with people in that way. So staying up to speed, and also, as many of you probably already know, BioBuzz can really keep you up to speed on the latest industry trends, especially in our area. So networking and professional development, highly recommend for really all roles, but especially within that CRA space, there are a lot of opportunities for growth and certifications that you can help yourself to stand out a little bit. So work-life balance and job satisfaction. I wanted to cover this because one thing I will say is that recruiting for CRAs over the years, usually the biggest complaint is travel. So if you are going to be a CRA, it's very likely you will travel, and companies can do it different ways. Sometimes they'll have it be regional and you're only in a car. That's rare. I would tell you it's more often that you're going to be on an airplane flying somewhere. The number of days a week can be variable. Typically anywhere from 50 to 80% is probably what you can expect in terms of how much you're traveling as a CRA. Now, there's definitely positives about that. If you like to travel and you like to go new places and meet new people, oftentimes companies will allow you to keep your points, your travel points. And so that can be a benefit. But it is something where, unless you get a job where you're doing virtual monitoring and you're not having to go on site, you will be on the road a good chunk of time. So again, think about if that's what you want to do and how you want to spend your time. And a lot of people really do enjoy that. And they get bored if they're home and in their home office. So oftentimes they will have a home office set up. There are some cases where companies will want people to come in on site when they're not traveling. However, oftentimes we've seen that they've really moved into more of a home office situation where you get to be at least be at home when you're not traveling. So the workload can be intense. So in hearing people, I think a lot of times the reasons CRAs may move roles within just other companies is because they feel like the travel isn't meeting their needs in terms of their work-life balance, or the number of sites they're being asked to visit. They feel like the workload is a little bit high. So those are all good questions to ask when you're interviewing for a CRA role, understanding what region you'd be covering, if you'd be doing nationwide, just regional, just one coast, and then also what you can expect in terms of the workload. So how many sites you're going to be visiting and how frequently you'll need to go to those sites. Also, how many studies you'll be working on to understand within, because studies are going to have their own sites. So if you have a lot of studies, then that means you're going to have even more sites most likely. So those are good questions to ask as you're looking. It is a very rewarding career path, though. This role touches a lot of pieces of the process, and it can really help build a great base for continuing into a long career within clinical research. Opportunities for growth, as I mentioned before, having the opportunity to move up the ranks and be the person that things are escalated to, maybe going with a younger, newer CRA on site to train them and help them learn the process. That might be another avenue. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities and directions that you can go. And those roles that I mentioned, the project management, clinical trial manager, regulatory quality, some of those other ones, they do not require the travel necessarily that the CRAs do. So a lot of times people will do that CRA role while they're enjoying the travel. And maybe they'll decide they want to be home-based and not travel as much, and they can find their way into some of those other positions. So the people that I've seen to make this work for them is they understand what the expectations are going to be in terms of how many days, either a week or a month, they're going to be expected to be on site somewhere, understanding if they get to create that schedule or if they have to follow somebody else's schedule. Also understanding how the expenses will work and if they will be responsible for paying for their travel up front and then reimbursed, or if the company arranges for that. So all of those things are things you can take into consideration as you're thinking about if this could work for you. And finally, just kind of looking at the industry trends and the future outlook. Unfortunately, there is just a high need for continued research, and there's a lot of need for us to continue to help find cures for things. There is also advancement in terms of what we're doing and the technologies available. So that is good. There's a lot of demand for the different therapies that are out there. So I would tell you that this is definitely a very stable field in terms of the industry and looking at the future and long-term career outlook. So that wraps up